Welcome to ciplantgo, a podcast aimed at introducing people living a plant-based lifestyle in Japan. For this episode, I interviewed Plamen Iontchev, a Bulgarian nuclear physicist who's been living in Tokyo for a few years. Plamen is one of the very first vegan I talked with in March 2018 during my first meetup in Kiba Park. He's one of the most regular members, attending almost all the meetings, and also started a meetup group called Team Vegan, centered around hiking, running, and the like among vegans. With such an original profile, I was certain Plamen's story would be more than interesting. Our 2 hours talk did not disappoint. Here is a pretty comprehensive list of the topics we addressed. This is long, so bear with me. Plamen's self-introduction, his life in Bulgaria, and how he came to live an active and plant-based lifestyle. How he became pescitarian for health reasons, and a warning from us about how fish is not that healthy after all. Plamen's discussion with his daughter, who had just turned vegan. Which circumstances saw him go vegetarian? How reconnecting with calves made him take the last step towards veganism. Plamen discovering the reality of the egg industry, and then me taking the time to point out that a balanced vegan diet is healthy, before adding some information about calf rearing and egg production. What brought Plamen to search for other vegans, and then stumbling on the Tokyo Vegan Meetup. How his eating habits and social life changed, for the better, after becoming vegan. What he knows about how it was being vegan in Sofia when his daughter went plant-based. Me leading a discussion about vegan activism and whether it's optional or mandatory. Plamen's experience of the vegan scene in Vienna. How we position ourselves regarding leather or samish items. Plamen learning about to what extent veganism can be healthy. How he came to live in Japan, his experience being vegan in Tokyo, what hiking and running brought to his life, Plamen's unusual cholesterol levels and what he did about it, and finally some rapid-fire questions. Before jumping in, a last few words about the, quote, Atkins diet, unquote, that helped Plamen address his cholesterol problem, and whether doing it vegan or not sounds possible to me. Short answer, maybe, but not with the 4 foods that he brought up, which are sauerkraut, tofu, seitan, and mushrooms. In any case, I strongly recommend not going on an Atkins diet, period. More details at the end of the podcast and an answer from Plamen to this, and in the show notes. And now, without further ado, I give you Plamen Iontchev. Welcome to ciplantgo and thank you for being my guest.
Yes, thank you too.
Can you briefly present yourself?
Okay, yes. My name is Plamen Iontchev. I'm born and live a long time in Bulgaria, in a town in the capital city, Sofia. There I graduated nuclear physics and then later was working in the only nuclear power plant in Bulgaria. So about 12 years I worked there until year 2002. And then apply for a job in Austria, Vienna for International Atomic Energy Agency, and luckily I was accepted and I started working there and I'm still working in the same company, but I moved from Vienna in Tokyo in July 2017. That means already about 2 years. I'm in Japan. Before that was visiting Japan for 5 years only. So we are actually talking probably more for vegan stuff or in general?
Like for everything. I mean, what's interesting to me and hopefully to the people who follow me on my podcast is to learn about people that are vegan or that are plant-based and
Yes.
and like to learn about them and like to really give a broader view of what kind of people end up being vegan, especially in Japan, right? It's not that common.
yeah.
So when you have someone who's working for Greenpeace, for example, one of my guests was Hannah,
Yes.
and makes kind of maybe more sense for her to be vegan, and I remember you meeting her at the
Yes,
Tokyo Vegan
yes.
Meetup, and it's was an interesting interaction because you working in the nuclear industry and her working for Greenpeace. It was like interesting, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was totally friendly, but those two individuals happen to have this very unique thing in common, unique as far as like Japan goes, right?
Yes.
So I usually say to my guests that, can you explain in as much detail as you feel comfortable?
Yes, yes.
Where you come from, etc. And so regarding your background there, I'm curious personally about what kind of, maybe upbringing, but if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. But like life, how was life in Bulgaria throughout, like before your studies or during your studies and when you were working in the nuclear industry?
Actually, yeah, Bulgaria, the life in Bulgaria, actually, if you can imagine, I was born during the communist time.
Yes.
Lived there a long time. Actually, I was quite happy during this time. Nothing wrong happened to me or something. I got a good education and things like that. Then everything abruptly changed 1990. So we enter in the strong economic collapse. Our economy was very bad. We become very poor. So this was a bit unfortunate. I had to search some job abroad, and I spent some time searching several years until finally 2002 I got offer from to work abroad in a good place in a way, in an international organization. So. Mm-hmm. So I succeed to go. At that time, actually, I'm old person already. I'm 56 years old. So you can imagine the very concept of veganism, vegetarian. It was unimaginable somebody to go that way. So it came to us much later. So in fact. During my 30s, 40s, something like that, I got pretty bad in health condition. I was quite overweight, feeling not very good in heart, and so this was part of my motivation actually to go, but it's not the full story. In fact, actually, I have a daughter. Yes, I didn't much talk about her in our vegan meetups group. I have a daughter who lives still in Bulgaria with her mom. Actually, she's quite grown up. She's 31 years old already. And several years ago, she very much liked animals. So like every young lady, and dogs and cats and all kind of stuff, and at some moment she realized that the whole society is so cruel to the animals, and decided to become vegan. So she made me very unhappy in the beginning. You can imagine. I was very much concerned about her health and well-being, and so we had a lot of philosophical discussion with her. But it happened that way that she convinced me that this is a good thing to do. And finally, I maybe about 6 or 8 months after she became a vegan, I resisted at the beginning. But I promised her that I would become a vegetarian at minimum. So I cut meat, I cut fish at some point, and but still was thinking, yeah, that's enough. And producing, eating dairy products, and that particularly if they are so-called humane raised and not killed is a good thing. But later I found out that's actually not true, and dairy industry and egg industry participate in the same cruelty as other. And at one moment I decided, to go fully vegan.
All right, that's surprising and very interesting. I'd love to learn more about this, to ask you more about this, and also at some point maybe go back to things related to before you became vegan. But since you started telling us what brought you to veganism, so around like how many years ago was that?
9 years ago.
9 years ago.
So,
And I'm curious because you said like you had a lot of discussions with your daughter at that time, and I think she was living with her mother. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you know if her mother went vegan as well or not?
No, unfortunately. I'm divorced actually, just to tell you. So I'm separated with the mother since how many years already? 12 years.
Okay.
More than this. And mother actually, I time to time see her very infrequently. Even last year I spoke with her. She said she would like to become a vegan or vegetarian, but somehow don't have a mental power, or, so she couldn't do this.
I see. I asked because you're saying you resisted in the first place, but like what? About less than a year, right? And then after that you became vegetarian.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then how much time later did you decided to be vegan?
It was a little bit step-by-step process. Actually, even becoming vegetarian was two-step process. At some point, I decided actually even without my daughter influence, at some point I decided to go to eat only fish, to go a healthy way, because I told you already I had a very bad, I was quite overweight, high BMI and things like that. At the time, no sport whatsoever. I went into depressions and things like that.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, first move towards a little bit to cure from these negative things was to start some sport a little bit. And I was not capable of anything else, but I started hiking in the mountains, and kind of got in love with this activity and started hiking, which actually improved drastically my at least mental status, also slowly the general health as well, but was still not vegan, eating all kind. Also traveling, I travel a lot in different countries, in different continents even.
For work?
For work, yeah. So it was interesting where I stopped eating meat. I was in Argentina. It was almost the place that is. Everybody claims it's the best beef in the world, and really was kind of tasty at that time. And I liked the beef. And at some point, I decided this is the bad thing. I have to stop these things. And one time, I just said that's my last meat I eat. It was they call it lomo and chorizo. Lomo is a big piece of steak, maybe half a kilo steak.
Oh,
yes, this is what they do. So I eat it. I took a picture. I have this picture somewhere. I cannot find it. I still keep it.
I see.
So this is my last meat, and yeah, interestingly, actually, I somehow when I took a decision, I never returned back.
Okay, and to go back to my question, do you have some do you remember how long that process lasted? Like from okay, I'll be vegetarian kind of thing that you after discussing with your daughter a few times to this is my last steak?
No, actually, this was prior even.
That was before?
Before my talking with.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, really?
I took decision this without influence of my
right.
daughter.
I see.
So maybe No. Actually, this was the first step towards veganism. To just stop eating beef and beef, pork, and this and that. Meat.
Yes, but
meat.
Was that before your daughter went vegan, or you knew your daughter went?
Before.
Okay.
Even she was not vegan at that time.
And then, so when she started talking to you about all this, you had already been not eating meat for a while. Then.
Yes. No.
Okay.
So I actually, but at that time I decided to go healthy, so to say, and I knew that fish is a good thing to do. So I, in fact, become Pescitarian. Okay. Without even knowing this terminology.
All right.
So I started eating, found in this already happening in Vienna, I become a pescatarian, found a relatively cheap source of salmon, which turned out actually later it's quite, this is kind of a fish farming. It's not so good for in general.
Like fish, whether it's like not farmed or foreign, there's, for every good thing you get out of the fish, you get a lot of not so good things for health, and without looking at the ethical side of things, fish already is not the best source of nutrients you think you're getting from the fish. So you want, if you want to focus on health, it's not the best choice, but it's better than meat. Mostly, I mean, depending on the kind of meat you're getting, but overall it's better than meat. So it's still a better move for your health to become pescatarian than just keep on eating red meat and processed meat and stuff.
And this actually continues something like 1 year. And at that time we start talking with my daughter about. So she, for some reason, she somehow became vegan very abruptly. She suddenly decided and cut everything, and from next day she was already vegan. And it happened. Such thing was sometime. Probably this was 2009 or I forget already exactly. So. I actually, she liked very much Norway, and she even studied some Norwegian language. So I did her a present, and with one ship from Germany, we traveled to Norway. This, you can imagine these big ships, touristic ships, and extremely big. And there, for about 10 days, was eating and drinking unimaginable quantity. I mean, it was, you pay once and you eat like a buffet every day.
Okay. But what kind of food? Was it like totally non-vegan food, I guess?
Everything.
Everything?
I mean, there was no specially vegan food, but a lot of meat, of course, all kind of, and maybe 20, 30 dishes there. So you, for vegan, you, of course, a lot of salads and this and that, but also fish, also meat. So I wanted to, of course, I was not yet vegan. I was eating fish at that time. Of course, meat was already out of question. Decision was taken. But she resisted all this beauty of... I was just surprised her mental. So, and we talk a lot about veganism at that time. And looks like this influenced me a lot. This theory particularly because...
All right. Well, I'm sure she was pretty happy when she saw how it would influence you a bit later on, and that you became vegan.
Yes.
Do you remember what kind of the content of the discussions you had, and what kind of approach she used? Because it's very hard to talk to your loved ones, like about values, right? And it's a very, very complicated topic with strangers, it's already hard enough. But when it's someone you know and it's someone in your family, it's very hard. Do you remember how she approached that topic with you?
In a way, yes. What was the argument? My argument was that non-veganism and particular eating of meat principally it's a historical thing, and it happened when the people settle from the temperate zone, when there are no vegetables and things like that into the northern or southern bit polar regions. So you cannot have actually food during the winter, during the bad seasons, and so that was the reason historically people start eating meat. And of course, in the equator, you have a lot of vegetables and it's nice food, yeah. So her argument was, yes, this was before, let's say, 100,000, 10,000 years ago. But now we are in the 21st century. Now every transportation means are perfect. You can get vegetables and vegan food at any point of the earth. Which is true. Okay, a little bit more expensive, but you can get everywhere vegan food. So it's time to change. This was, and I said, well, what I can say, it's true, yeah. So this was one of the arguments that convinced me strongly. And I was still not fully convinced. And another thing, I was thinking, going vegan, nevertheless, you like proteins, you like some nutritions that are only in meat and fish and things like that. So it's kind of a bad thing to do for our health, purely veganism. Yeah. And was not fully convinced still. And it took me almost 1 year later. After this trip and maybe 1-2 months later, I just promised her, okay, I would become vegetarian, but not full vegan. Sorry.
All right, so you stopped fish at that time.
At that time, I just stopped fish, which was kind of easy. Not maybe it passed close to 1 year after I was on fish diet, so I almost forget the taste of meat at that time. So I'm just at that point cut the fish.
What did you change to your diet other than removing the fish? Did you think that you needed some more, for example, let's say eggs or more dairy to compensate?
Actually,
or did you...
yes. To tell you, I experienced such a crave more to dairy and particularly cheese. I was eating a lot of that time. Hanami and just eating a lot of dairy at that time. Of course, a lot of vegetables, plant food as well, and dairy. It continued about one year, this period, on purely vegetarian. So we are coming until something like September 2010, and I don't remember the date. I have it recorded sometime. But I knew it, maybe 15 September or something.
All right.
Like that. It's kind of middle. I told you I already was a good hiker and was hiking. And one time with friends, we were on one high mountain in Austria, in Alps. And actually it was a nice hike, a 3 days hike. So we were staying something like 2,300 meter elevation on one farm, which actually they accepted us that we are, I guess, we paid them and we stayed this farm. It was very basic conditions, no showers, toilet even only one with cold water, and that you wake up in the morning, go wash your face with the cold water outside, and September. Actually nice weather, not so bad. And what this farm, they had actually maybe 20 calves. Calves actually quite big.
Yeah.
So and I go with them, stroke and play with them. They're very nice animals. With some tags on their ears, the European way of tagging animals, and then next day we had to go down, but in the same time turned out actually the owners, this farm was not permanent. This family stay in this farm only summertime. So they raise this calf, let them run around, eat the grass. This is actually how they feed them, normally from the natural grass of the mountain. And they said, we are tomorrow with the calves going to the valley. And many people, so what? Yeah, they said, but that means that's the last days of this calf. They'll be killed next 2 days and then sold for beef. Basically, they are not raised to be. Maybe some of them, female ones, could be for milk production, but male ones would be killed for food for
calf meat.
Calf meat. And to them, when he said this, just one phrase only just hurt me badly in the heart. Already. So, and I at that point decided with fully conscious that veganism is bad for health and I do sacrifice, but I go vegan. So
all right, that's beautiful. So you were thinking that you would actually lose the benefits of a fully healthy diet because it wasn't agreeing with how those foods that would make you more healthy are produced, right? Like taking lives of other sentient beings. That's great.
And at that time, I actually already knew that dairy products and eggs and these are causing death of the animals. I forget to tell you another part of my story that was actually a very long time ago. As a child, until 7 years, maybe from 1 year to 7 years, I was living only with my grandma on a small village in the mountains. And they had you may say it now, it's kind of organic personal farm for personal use. Actually, we had one cow, we had one pig, and maybe 20 hens with a cock, and so they were bringing eggs, and we were killing for New Year the pig, so for food. Cow was giving milk, so there was some gardens for vegetables, and so that kind of a lifestyle. So of course I knew very well more or less what is happening. So one of the things that normally happen to cow, she was impregnated for every year to give birth of the calf. So this calf, after she brings to the world, give birth, stays about 3 months with us. So she was feeding the calf, and we were taking, I don't remember, but maybe half milk for the calf, half for us, or something like that. And then we were giving to the big factory the calf, of course, to be killed. And so I knew that in order to have, not fully consciously knew, but in order to have a cow to have a milk should be impregnated every year. And this calf, of course, where goes to be killed later. So this I knew from my previous life. The things that I didn't know was for eggs, that the male chicken, when they are born, they have to be killed. And what I learned very cruelly with the shredder or something like that. So this I learned later, during already my transition to veganism. So in that moment, I knew the all bad consequences when I decided to go vegan with this mountain hut. So this, in a way, formed all my basis for my decision. I decided to go vegan at that particular point and never came back.
All
This
right.
was one snap and go there.
Great. Can I just interrupt for a few seconds to point out that since we said a few minutes ago that you were thinking it wasn't the healthiest choice to go vegan at the time,
Yes.
let's make it clear as far as I think both of us understand it. Now it's healthier to be vegan with a balanced vegan diet than to be eating any kind of animal products. So it's just for like, if someone's listening and they stop the podcast before I say this and they think it's not right, let's not say that we said it's not healthy, right?
Yeah.
And also, regarding the calves, you both like met when you were a kid, and those you met like doing that hike just
Yes.
when you decided to become vegan. I'm not an expert at all in how calf meat is being produced in either Eastern Europe or in France or in Austria, but I would think that from what I read in Animal Liberation and what in some other sources, that the calf production, usually in the dairy industry, the calves are removed from their mothers way earlier than 3 months. They don't stay with the mothers that long, and they don't have the opportunity to be eating grass and like, because ideally, if it's still the case, especially in France, they want that kind of meat for high quality restaurants to be very white, right? And so for that, you need to restrict a lot the amount of iron the calf ingests, because it basically you want them to be anemic. You want them to be suffering from anemia so that their muscles don't turn red, right? And it doesn't change anything for the taste. The taste is apparently the same. The texture is the same. It's just the color. And for the sake of color, they're torturing even further those calves than they would do if they were like let them eat in like or drink some natural milk, let's say. Though they have these formulas that they feed them, and I think nowadays it's not allowed anymore. Even maybe in the States it's not allowed anymore, but that I'm not sure of. They would have those calves in very like small living like places where they couldn't turn around. And the reason why they wouldn't want them to turn around at all is that since they're anemic, they're craving for like things that contain iron. So they would even lick the metal fence or whatever there's around, and they would like lick their own droppings. So their urine and their feces, they would lick that to get the iron, right? So much that they're like kind of feeling weak because of the lack of iron. And to prevent that, they would prevent them to just turn around, so that if you can't go where your droppings are, like you can't lick them. So that this is like just think about that makes you so angry at the industry. But I would say that the calves you've met through your life were living in ideal conditions compared to that, but still they end up living very short lives and being used as property and killed for meat. So this was more than a few seconds. Oh, and before I forget, regarding the eggs, so you're totally right about the male chicks being either killed through grinding or like gas chamber, or just thrown in a bag and like suffocating because of all the weight of the other male chicks. That's totally true. And you can find a lot of videos about that terrible thing on the internet. But also what's less known is that even if you have backyard hens, right, and you're taking eggs from them, right, when like chicken in more natural conditions, they don't lay eggs every day, right? They lay a certain amount of eggs. I think it's between 10 and 20. I discussed that with one of my previous guests, but in Japanese. And then I looked up a lot of sources in English, so I can relink those again in the show notes here. But they lay a certain number of eggs, and then they just keep them warm or whatever, and that's it. They don't lay more eggs for quite a while after that. So overall, throughout a year, if it's not an egg laying hen that's been, let's say, breeded to be laying hens every day, they're gonna maybe lay something between, I read something like 30 eggs a year or maybe 50 eggs a year.
Yeah.
But that's if you don't take it. If you take it, they want to lay another egg. So just the fact of taking the egg that you think it's not impregnated, it's not going to become a chick, right? So there's no stealing of life. But you're basically asking that laying hen to lay another egg. And laying eggs is a very taxing process for the body of the hen. And it kind of, in extreme conditions, can be the cause of osteoporosis. So they're losing calcium. And I mean, I understand that it's such a better environment if it's backyard hens and you can love them and you think like you're giving them shelter and you're getting their eggs in return and it's a fair trade and they're happy, you know. But it's still seeing them as a resource.
Yes.
Right? And you would probably not have them if you were not taking the eggs. You would be like, why would I care for them if I don't have the eggs in return, right? Like maybe after a while you would because you start to love them, right?
Yes.
But just love them and don't eat eggs. Damn it. Right? Yeah. And that's enough, right? I mean, they have one life, as far as we understand it, as we do. Yes. And even if eggs were the most healthy thing in the world to eat, right? Just do without it and try to find those nutrients somewhere else. And there's points of view about like how cholesterol in eggs is not healthy. So you can be of different opinions there, but from an ethical standpoint, I don't think it's the best. So that was a long few seconds, but
yes.
I thought it was better to put this here rather than later.
Yeah. I can tell you actually the hens and chicken in my backyard of my grandma, there were actually two functions. One was for eggs, but also my grandma was using them for just food.
Of course.
For chicken. And even I feel bad, but she loved me very much. And when I show up and go to her and she, with the bare hands actually using to kill and cut the head of the chicken and then cook it for me. And she was actually, grandma was practically vegetarian. She was eating very, very little amount of meat, but for one purpose. She was thinking meat is so good, so she was sparing meat for her grandchildren or child, but she didn't wanted to eat meat in order that we have a good food. So turned out actually she was until now the longest living member of our family.
That's interesting. Yes.
She died at 87 years old. Okay. Yes. So this was the consequences of the whole story.
Yes. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, this is a little bit diversion to tell. So concerning, let's come back to the moment. And at this moment, I told her I decided to become vegan. And yeah, I just went vegan. It continued about 2 years like that. And I was kind of in doubt still. Yeah, I became vegan.
Was that in Austria still?
Still in Austria,
okay.
Yeah. But at that time, about a year later, I started coming to Japan as for my work. And at some moment, I decided to see. Actually, I was just vegan. I didn't know anybody and was kind of a single vegan alone in the world. Yeah. Decided to see if there are other vegans around. And coming to Tokyo, actually, I decided to see if there are vegans in Tokyo. This is happening 2012 around already. and started searching internet and came to the something that now I use a lot, but at that time was very new to me. It's a meetup platform. I discovered a meetup platform using just searching internet. And they were saying, yeah, there is one group, a meetup group, vegan meetup group in Tokyo. Oh, okay, very interesting. So I actually found that they had a meetup for one restaurant, gathering of one restaurant, and decided to sign up. Like, okay, register, sign up, and went. Forget exactly where was the whole story, but this is happening sometime in 2012.
Yeah, so probably Nadia is not in charge yet. And
Nadia
I would think it's probably at the Pink Cow, and it's probably one of their Thursday.
Pink Hour was later. No, it was
later.
Not Pink Hour. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, maybe Pink Hour was also there, but this time was another restaurant.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
forget which one was this. I think I never been after that in this restaurant. And the one American guy actually was running this meetup was called Euro, which I think was before Nadia's time. Euro. And he was very friendly, very nice. So I went to this meetup, and of course there were very young people there, which I'm a bit older to them, and I sit separate, and they were sitting separate. Suddenly came to me one old Japanese person, quite old, maybe 65 years old, and because of lack of that, we start to talk with him. Turned out he became vegan for healthy reasons. He was vegan already. And the reasons actually he became was he had a cancer, quite serious, very intelligent person. He knew perfect English. I don't know, he was working somewhere abroad and knew around. He had cancer, and the things he told me was that because of veganism, he was cured from cancer. And he said, yeah, a few days ago he went to the doctor and he said, I'm clean now. And I said, really? That's the first time actually I heard in fact, not only is not bad for health, it's opposite. It's extremely good for health. So this was the last, not the last, but one of the very influencing point that I understood that I did the right decision about 2 years before.
Did you look like this up more like on the internet or ask more people about it? Because like having one anecdotal and happy encounter like that, where even if what he says is true for him, you might not want to generalize that, vegan diets are not especially the one cure to cancer. I'm sure it definitely helps, but
I don't know. I mean, we talked with him, so he was so fascinated by veganism. He told me he write a book about this, how good it's for health, and this and that. He was healthy oriented vegan, not so much for animals, but he showed me actually very interesting pictures taken from his book, taken some research lab, actually with the camera put in the stomach. For one man. So before he became vegan and after he became vegan. So before he became vegan and he put, it was actually terrible look. So just by picture from this camera. And after 6 months after he became vegan, everything in his body became just beautiful.
But what is beautiful then? Because I don't have a sense of how a stomach should look like when it's beautiful.
I don't know, but the previous picture, not vegan, was a bit almost black and brown.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm sure. Hopefully, it was really a better condition when he got vegan. That person's stomach, but. Who are we to know what a healthy stomach looks like from the inside?
Yeah, okay.
Right. So, all right. And then, so he showed you that?
Yes, he showed me that from his book, and he was going to publish this. Of course, I try actually later to find this guy, what was his name, but somehow I lost track on him, unfortunately. And I hope he's okay and really cured from cancer. I believe so, yeah, if he said doctors determined this. So this was kind of the moment that I understood that, in fact, actually, the good health came as a price to the decision you make from ethical point. You think actually it's bad for health, and later. One thing I forget to tell you, one of the reasons I really was concerned about veganism was really what should I eat now after I become vegan.
I wanted to ask you about what did you eat, like in Austria or that kind of thing.
Yeah, this became a problem because it's almost everything contain meat or dairy or plants, or only plants. This not so much exist, and it's a really problem in a way. However, I'm a scientist actually in a way, so I have a scientific mind, and interestingly, I read about food pyramid. Maybe you are familiar with the food pyramid. So the bottom levels are all kind of algae and in the sea, and then there are plants, actually bacteria, plants, and then animals that eat plants. Animals that eat animals, they are predators and carnivores, and then even animals that eat plants, things like that. So pyramid is kind of a 5 level, if I remember correctly. And every higher level, the biomass is about 10 times less than the previous level. So if you have a plant kingdom, the animal kingdom that eat these plants about 10 times less in quantity.
From biomass, perfect.
From biomass, purely perfect. That means animals that, and the animals that eat animals are 10 times, so 100 times less than the plants, yeah?
Okay.
So, and we are eating as animals exactly this kind of, so it's not only no shortage of food, it's 10 times more food.
Oh, all right, I see your logic there. Yeah, okay. Okay, so you have 10 more times like biomass wise, like amount of food at your disposal if you're looking into it.
Yes.
Okay, but you still have to find your next meal in a convenient way. What did you do?
Yeah. Well, this is still a problem even until now. Just after a while, you get used to it, and you just get more experienced. You become more social, so you start speaking with other vegans, and they tip you, and you find this store and this food. So this is in a way, slowly you learn where to find your food.
Were you eating mostly outside at the time, or like what did your eating habits before, like even when you were eating meat, but then after that when you were pescatarian and then vegetarian, were your eating habits mostly focused on eating out, eating at restaurants and stuff, or were you like kind of cooking more, or was it like half? What kind of eating habits did you have?
Well, staple food I eat mostly at home. Though I enjoy to go out and meet friends, and I was kind of before not very social type of person. I was kind of always staying alone. But when I become a vegan, and I start to find many vegan friends and enjoying just going with them for restaurants and food, and until now I enjoy this.
Great.
Yeah, this is...
All right, so you're eating out a bit more than before?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
And when you turned vegan in Austria, was it like you were not eating out that much at that time, right?
Yes.
So what did you change to your at-home diet? Did you like kind of added some specific foods to your diet, and did you look up recipes, or What kind of things did you do? Do you remember?
I time to time look at recipes, though I'm not so good cook, and in a way, just from purely practical and save time point of view, I went maybe 50, 60, 70% raw food eating.
Okay.
Just to be fast. And, so in a way, sometimes I joke, there is a one bar in Tokyo, Dotrao.
Yeah.
And one time I eat this food and I said, oh my God, this looks like I'm going to get home.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly the same for me. The reason why, a lot of maybe people listening to this might have seen my food pictures from what I eat at home on my Instagram account. And it's exactly the same idea. I mean, it takes me a lot of time overall to still prepare the mostly raw food stuff I'm preparing. But compared to what I would have to put as far as time and energy and effort to learn new recipes and really look them up, and I'm sure I'm saving time. I hope I'm saving time. Well, I enjoy my food as well, but yeah, .ro is definitely very much like home. It feels like home. It's comfortable. Yes. I like the music. So I would go more often if it was less like home for the food, but I mean, yeah.
Sometimes I cook, or let's say I learned later that we'll come to this point as well, that eating beans is very healthy. And actually, beans in my country, Bulgaria particularly, is one of the staple foods. So we eat beans a lot. And particularly one spicy that I have problems to find in Japan, but it exists in Mediterranean region, and we make beans with this spicy. It's called savory. And peppermint, so we do peppermint, savory, and this gives such a taste of beans, perfect. All right. But to save time again, I usually cook a large quantity, let's say 2 kilo, and I especially bought a big pot, 10-liter pot to cook, so I make a big quantity of beans, so I spend 4 or 5 hours on
so this. You're making your beans from dry beans then?
Yes.
Okay.
And then put them in especially I was buying some food in small jars, maybe 200-300 cc. And then distribute this large quantity that I cook in jars and put in the deep fridge.
Yeah. Freezer, right? Yeah.
So,
I do the same with some of my food.
This saves me a lot of time later.
Yeah, it does,
And I don't need to cook it, just take it out, and it's almost natural flavor, everything.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. But it still requires quite a bit of preparation, right? So when people say being vegan is complicated, that's one part of it, right? It is a commitment to being organized in a way where you want to eat healthy and at home, and you're not living, like if you're living somewhere like in certain parts of Tokyo where you have a lot of outside food options.
Yes.
For example, I believe that Nadia is eating out quite often because her work just takes her a lot of different places.
Yes.
She's definitely in the right area of Tokyo, like Jiugaoka, like all the western side of town. Like if it was around here where I live, there's almost nothing. There's a very few options, but yeah. So it's good that you're doing that. And was that also kind of true when you were in Australia? Did you start doing things that way, like mostly raw and?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, actually, I moved to I was living in Vienna, and Vienna, different. Vienna is actually most of the vegan stuff is kind of south, below Danube, kind of south of Danube, and I moved to live north of Danube, kind of in new parts. So I had an apartment there, and around me there is almost no anything vegan. But the good thing is I can just take a metro, and in 12 minutes I'm in the centrum.
Great.
So, and Vienna is much smaller than Tokyo, so I can move to vegan places very easy.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah, so even it appears there is one place, Pratenstein, it's quite famous, and there is one It's almost vegan falafel bar
Okay.
that works until very late, 11 o'clock or something. So many times I just pass by and take falafel and eat a lot. Also kind of vegan sausages they have American style, quite tasty. Yeah.
All right. Since we're talking about food options and eating a vegan diet in Vienna, I was curious when you talked about your daughter and in Sofia, like becoming vegan over there. Do you know how was the vegan scene at the time for her in Sofia? Did you hear anything about that or experience anything yourself?
Actually, in Sofia, vegan stuff was very, very limited. She was probably one of the first vegans in Bulgaria. Unfortunately, we little bit destroy our relationship with my daughter. I didn't want that much to talk about
that.
On a ground. Of course, many people divide like that. She become kind of very much activist for vegan, and she was thinking, I'm not so much activist. In that.
Well, you took part in the march yesterday with us, like to close down all slaughterhouses.
This was actually for me a bit surprising. This was first time I took a march.
Well, good.
She would be actually probably pleased to learn this thing. But yeah, she was doing this kind of activities, and even her perception that I'm not even a vegan, but a person on a plant-based diet. This is because for her, vegan is not only that you don't eat animal products, but also you have to participate to all kind of vegan activity, which I disagree. I said I'm vegan, sorry.
Okay.
I do it on ethical grounds, primary, and health is the secondary and things like that. But maybe I don't go to protest and making animal rights stuff, but I save a lot of animals and
True.
try to promote these things to other people. Yeah. So, okay, but yesterday I did.
Well, I mean, it's always, there's always someone who's going to do more for the cause you believe in or you think you believe in than yourself, right? Like it's true for me and this podcast, there's people doing more or in a more efficient manner. I think it's important to know where you draw the line between, what's your baseline basically, right? So for example, all vegans that are ethical vegans would have a baseline where it's I'm not eating animal products, and some of those vegans will have a baseline where it's like if I don't do some amount of outreach, I think I'm not living in a ethical manner enough, right? And from what you told me about your daughter switching to veganism very abruptly, yes. I can see how that kind of person would be very much wanting to do outreach as like everyone should do this, because if you don't do it, you're not giving that amount of time or energy to save the animals, right? Yes. So it's basically every animal you're not saving, you're kind of responsible of its death or his or her death to some extent, right? And I mean, but it's a never-ending dilemma, yes. Right? Everything you do, like what we're doing now, everything you buy, right? You could give your money away for some cause, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very interested in effective altruism, but on the other hand, I realized that this podcast is not the best use of my time if I was solely focused on saving more animals. I think, for example, what Nadia does, bringing people together around good food, has way more potential for having people eat a more plant-based diet, and therefore less meat, and therefore less meat being produced. And so she's probably helping save more lives than I'll ever be doing, even if I had twice or 3 times or 10 times the amount of listeners I have, right?
Yes.
And sure, I thought about that before starting, but again, I think that if you choose your challenges, you do something that is meaningful to you, and you're still leaving behind you let's say, you look behind you, you see a life where you've done more good than bad from your own point of view, and that point of view might change throughout your life. I think that's already very good and very, like, you'll be happy about yourself. And
Yes.
yeah, so there's always going to be people doing more. And the activists that are the most, like, feeling strongly about this, like, you might have heard of Gary Yukovsky, for example.
Yes, yes.
I think...
He was highly influenced of Gary
Oh,
Yurovsky.
really? You listen to him? Okay, good. I mean, I find him... It's the same, right? He expresses in his videos, in some of his videos, that he's tried a more softer approach. It didn't work better, so he's gonna keep at being very aggressive. Yeah. When he was an activist, right now he's retired, I believe. But and then you have an Earthling Ed, and then you have more like recent activists that are very, very, very soft compared to him. And who's gonna have the most impact? And like, first, where do you get those numbers about how many people are you reaching, right? And I think like Gary Yukovsky, I get his last name wrong, sorry about that, but he didn't go along at all with his family all the way to the end. And there's interviews of him talking about family, not only his, but overall, and saying something like, you shouldn't consider family as an exception, and you should like cut ties with your families if they don't recognize the truth, like about like the ethical stance of veganism, right?
Yes.
And I can't 100% disagree with him. I cannot 100% disagree with him. I can kind of see where he comes from, although I can't totally not compare to his life experiences, but I think he's wrong overall, because being a human being, it's about connections. And if you cut connections just on the grounds of, and I mean, it may be some extreme cases where the family is just horrendous people to begin with. But I think in most cases, if you can put yourself in the shoes of that family member you're talking with, right? Especially if you're not a vegan to begin with yourself, think back about how you felt when someone was vegan or vegetarian around you and tried to talk to you about that. If that ever happened to you when you were not vegan.
Yes.
Well, if you're not able to do that anymore, you're lacking empathy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're all about, have empathy, have compassion for animals, but you're not even able to have empathy to be empathetic to that human being in front of you and where they are in their own emotional and, let's say, intellectual journey.
Yes.
And maybe they'll never be vegan, but that kind of building the bridge between people, if you're not able to build bridges with your loved ones, and most of what you're doing is kind of hurting those connections, maybe it's not as important as saving animal lives. Maybe it's better to use your time saving animal lives than trying to repair those like family ties. But from who we are as human beings and what makes us want to live and what makes us love our family to begin with more than other people, it's kind of going against your own nature. And I don't especially like that word nature, but I think it's important. And to be a better individual and that serves the cause even better, it's showing that you're loving and caring for everyone. Like Chihiro said yesterday before the march, when she said like, there's going to be probably people coming at you saying like, I want to eat meat or whatever, right, during our march. And it's not about them being good people, like neither being bad people, it's just people, right?
Yes.
And being, and understanding that maybe that was you in the past, and maybe those might be friends in the future if they ever come around and reevaluate their stance on eating animal products, right?
Yeah.
I mean, animals are innocent, so it's so easy in a way to side with them. They don't have moral agency that we know of. So even when they do awful things, quote unquote awful things, it's not there. There's no ethics behind that, right? It's all nature. But human beings, we tend to see them as being evil or good, right? But I think it's all very, it's more shades of gray there too. It's like momentum of your life, and it's how to bring people towards more love and more compassion. That's where that kind of bridge building thing is very important. So activists that are kind of pushing some people away, especially close ones, again, I think I can see where that emotional need comes from to really stay strong in your own beliefs and values and don't compromise, right? It's a fuel, right? But I'm not sure it's the most long-lasting fuel. And I also think it might be painful for that individual to kind of push people you really love away for those reasons.
Yeah. Well, it's a very fundamental question. Actually, almost similar division in a way happened in Austria. In Austria, actually, there are two societies which kind of split at some point.
Vegan societies, you mean?
Yeah, there are actually two. One is a purely vegan society. They are also for animals, but they are much more softer. So they are called Vegan Society Austria. And there is one society is called, they are active. The other society is the activist kind of.
All right, so the first one is not especially doing any kind of outreach, and the second one is...
They do, but they don't normally do demonstrations and this and that. This is done by other societies called Vegans gegen Tierfabriken. That means vegans against factory farming. Factory farming, and they are much more aggressive, going to difficult to say. Both actually are bringing kind of awareness to the society, but the ones that is the purely vegan, they are more focused on eating and not eating food, and they are actually very interesting. There are already 7,000 people society, and they slowly.
You've looked at recent numbers, or was when you were
2 years ago at least, maybe now even more, because this almost an explosion there. In Vienna, almost was 2 years before 77,000 vegans, and community is growing quite large numbers, and I practically believe that vegan society is bringing more people. This is the whole point. The more people, even only stopping eating meat, even doing the smallest step. This is one of my friends we spoke. Even small step is already a big deal. To cut number of cruelty, and so it cannot be abrupt process for the general population. It's slow process. You have to be happy in each achievement you make. So this is and the vegan society is doing excellent. They have magazine. They have even to the point they have things like a vegan ball. Usually February, so they make a music and dancing.
Oh, ball. Okay.
Ball.
The dancing. All right.
Dancing, vegan. So.
All right. I don't see how that works, but at least the food and the beverages are all vegan. But do the guests have to be all vegan as well?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say no leather and that kind of stuff. You can't have leather shoes and that kind of stuff. That's complicated.
I mean, they don't say it, but even I passed through one transition that it took me about 2-3 years to get rid of all my leather things.
Yeah, I still have some items, but I can see that.
The things I have few items too, and some medication which I almost eat. But there was from my previous life, so to say. So like a non-vegan vitamin D3,
I see.
that I learned. But it's almost gone.
All right.
Practically all my things are vegan. My mattress is still not vegan, contains some wool.
Really?
But the problem is, I'm in Japan now. Difficult to get rid and to find another one. This is
really?
my problem.
I hadn't thought
I'm a
about
European
that.
standard bed, and here difficult to find a European standard. Yeah, that's the. These kind of small things, but I don't consider me less vegan that I have.
Like
stuff,
the nitpickiness of vegans who denigrates other vegans for differences in how much activism they do or lack thereof everything comes from a good place. And I'm the first one, right? When I read someone saying like, oh, I gave up meat recently. I'm eating all of that every day. I'm eating a lot of plants and blah blah, and and it's basically dairy products as much as I want to. I feel the need emotionally, let's say, to say, yeah, great for the dairy cows you're using the milk of, right?
Yes.
But it's not gonna help, so shut up. I say that to myself, right? It's not gonna help. Smile and say, yeah, great job, awesome. Keep going.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't want to even say something like you're on the right path. Maybe that person doesn't want to hear that you tell them they're not there yet, right?
Yes.
Maybe for them, that's as good as it gets, and they're not starting from the same place as you are. So, as you said, right, every thing that you can do, that you're doing that, like, not eating one meal with meat and that kind of thing helps, right?
Yes.
And so flexitarians are gonna be way more helpful in our current society than vegans. And we should encourage that. It's a very effective altruism kind of approach where you wanna prioritize what gets you the best results, the most results, right? And like the Human League, for example, so yesterday at the march, Maho was there, who's running the Human League in Japan. They've been focusing on ending caged hens, production of eggs, and talking to big actors like in the United States, like I don't remember exactly, but that might have been McDonald's, KFC, and that kind of big actors. And they had very good results there. But they're still saying only one thing: stop using caged hens, like be cage free, right? What does that mean? Does that mean like the hens have an awesome life? Absolutely not. It's still pretty horrendous. Yeah. Is it better? Well, it's less worse. So what's the amount of suffering they're helping avoid doing that? I think it's pretty huge, right? So it's definitely going to have more impact on lessening the suffering of animals than the march we did yesterday.
Yes.
But it's hard to acknowledge that. It's difficult, when you feel strongly about helping animals, you don't want to say something like, yeah, just give up meat, but you can still have dairy. You don't want to say that. You really do not want to say that, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it's a challenging thing.
Even here there is this outreach for what was meat-free Monday. These kind of things actually are nice. Yeah, just you reduce the consumption.
No, it helps tremendously. If everyone would cut one day of meat, it doesn't have to be Monday, it doesn't have to be one time a week, but let's say you're eating meat every day, you cut one day. If you're eating meat 5 days a week, but just do it like 4 days instead of 5. If everyone was doing that, it would have like a tremendous impact on the industry, and the industry wouldn't be happy about it. But
yes.
But less animal bred, and so less overall suffering. But it's hard. Human beings are not meant to compute such abstract numbers.
Yeah.
Like we see a life in front of us, we want to protect it. I think that's very innate to who we are as living beings, right? It's our capacity for empathy, our like natural capacity, like tendency to want to protect what's weak, and especially when it's cute, and all that's pretty related to how we feel about kids, for example,
Yes.
But when it becomes just numbers and like, let's say, scientific facts about suffering and how much maybe chickens suffer more than us because they're not able to, let's say, conceptualize what pain is, so they react in a more primal way. So we can like just toughen up and take on pain when we know it's for our own good, like when you go to the dentist, for example. All those kind of ideas, and putting all those numbers there and thinking about, now what's the best course of action for me, and what's the best course of action for society as a whole if we want to reduce that, compared to, okay, I can save animals like doing this. Yeah, it's complicated. And I think it requires discussions.
Yes.
Because when you become vegan for ethical reasons like you did, there's a lot of emotions involved. Yes. And so you are not knowledgeable most of the time about a lot of things, right? Some vegans gain a lot of knowledge and then become vegan, and that's great. But most vegans like kind of become vegan and hopefully they gain knowledge afterwards. But I think a lot of vegans just don't look up that much science facts and don't try to have or listen to conversations about all those tiny details about ethics and efficiency, etc. Right? Yes. So you have a stance, you're like, I'm fighting for the animals, if they're kind of activist people. But if you're missing the big picture, right, for whatever reason it is, you're still doing good, hopefully. There's some kind of activists that I would argue can do more harm than not. Yeah. When you push people away and you kind of make them more anchored in their own positions. But most activists, I think, don't do that. So you're still helping. It's just like, you want to help, but just do this then instead. You're going to help more. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's not easy to kind of be open-minded to those different perspectives.
Yes, yes. I was kind of from the second ones that decided to go vegan, and after that I learned a lot of things about veganism, how the body functions. This was actually the cause for the whole thing. Without this, I would never actually be interested even what's happening. Yeah, this I was from the second type of person, and I consider this was practically, if not the best things I did for myself and for the animals and for the society, becoming vegan. Just pity when I was young and like all you guys, this concept didn't existed. Actually, in fact, existed some. There were long time ago I remember in Sofia, the place I was born, there was one vegetarian restaurant. And my mother, grandma, and everybody was telling, yeah, these people are quite sick, vegetarians, and they don't look well. And but there is a vegetarian, not vegan, vegetarian restaurant, only thing. And second things was at one work, one guy actually was practically vegan. I didn't know him very well, but he actually was very strong, but he died quite early, about 60 years old, the guy. And we were thinking actually he died because of veganism. Yeah. Later, actually, I watched a video from YouTube. We didn't talk about this, about scientific basis behind Dr. Greger.
Okay.
It was something about 2 years after I became vegan, and I just came across completely accidentally of his first video that I watched, and then was so important about vitamin B12 for omega-3, things like that. And I understood all these things, why people at the past, which were becoming vegan, actually didn't. They had a problem with health. Thanks, exactly, because nobody knew at that time importance of these additives that you have to take as a vegan. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, true. Like supplementation is very important, but it's not only for vegans. I don't think
Yes.
most omnivores have an optimal intake of even like B12 and that kind of thing. So it's just like because vegans have to be more careful that they often those who look into that end up being more careful about like the details about how much like B12 they get, vitamin D they get, etc.
Yes.
But it's already true for omnivores that whatever you're eating, as far as B12, for example, goes, you're getting it indirectly from supplements fed to the meat, the animals that will become your meat, because it's not prevalent in the food they're eating themselves anymore, because they're not like, unless it's grass-fed beef or that kind of stuff where you can still have a lot of B12 compared to factory farmed beef that's fed grains or whatever. But yeah, so supplementation is also it's always often, not always, it's often an argument of non-vegans towards vegans saying like, it's not natural, you have to take supplements. Like, I mean, dude, nothing you're eating is natural. Okay, so veganism is more natural, especially when you're whole food, than being an omnivore. I wanted to ask you, so you said you started traveling to Japan
Yes.
about 5 years before living here. So that would have been like about 7 years ago you started traveling to Japan.
Yes.
Did you have any interest in the country in the first place, or was it kind of more circumstances that had you travel here?
It was more circumstantial.
Okay.
I mean, I was our organization. It's responsible for different parts of the world, and I moved to another so-called division. So this division, before my division was Middle East and India and Pakistan. This time they Far East, like Japan, Korea. So I started to work. Just I had to internal change in the place where I have to go, and not. I mean, I didn't choose this. My bosses chose to send me there, and I started traveling to Japan.
All right. And so, but was it you who? So you started traveling there, but when came the time to live here, was it a decision that you made, or was it something that was put in front of you and you agreed to it? How did that work?
Actually, about 3 years ago, one of my bosses told me, "Do you want to come permanently to Japan?" And I said yes. But then it didn't happen. They took another guy somehow. But I said, okay, that's no problem. And 2 years later, they remember, you wanted to go to Japan. We need one person to come here. Do you still keep your wish to come to Japan? I said, yes, I like Japan very much. There was actually a bit unfortunate situation. My mother actually passed away in 2016, so about 6 months before I came here. If not, I was thinking, no, I don't. And she was quite old already, so had to take care for her. Although I was traveling to Bulgaria, from Vienna to Bulgaria, so from Japan it would be much more difficult. So in a way, when she passed away, I had no any more connections what to do, and I was free to come to Japan.
Okay,
Yeah, a
I
bit
see.
unfortunate, but it's happened like that. Yeah,
I see.
So
And how did coming here and living here impact or not impact your lifestyle, your habit with food and eating out and that kind of stuff? You already knew about Tokyo Vegan Meetup at the time, right?
Yeah. I already was here. How impact? Actually, a bit more difficult to live in Japan than in Austria. Austria is much more vegan friendly than Japan, and they have much more restaurants, and every supermarket in Austria had a vegan stand. with vegan products, particularly, and they have organic shops all over Vienna, organic vegan ice cream in many places, tasty.
Yes.
Even in non-vegan, especially non-vegan gelateria, they call it.
I see, yeah.
They have maybe 6-7 types of vegan ice cream,
really?
and my favorite is this brown one, vegan brownie.
That sounds very good. Yes.
I'm going to go now in July, so I'm going to taste it again.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah. So did you find it difficult here?
But I mean, with time, I learn a lot how to find food, and even traveling to Japan. Tokyo is generally no problem. You can buy vegan food or go to restaurant, whatever. My, in a way, life-saving stuff is the internet, particularly Google, on the application Happy Cow that I have. I travel here a lot in some small places that most of the people have never heard, even Japanese, they don't know about them. So small towns, small villages, and things like that. So usually my saving stuff is to find a supermarket. Not a convenience store so much, supermarket. And usually in Japan, almost everywhere there are supermarkets. You have to just know how to find it. And in the Google Maps, I find supermarket. Usually have to go sometime by foot, quite large distances, in order a few kilometers away. But for me, it's no problem because I'm a hiker. So I just take my shoes and
I see. And what did you get? What do you get then at the supermarket usually?
Some fruit, vegetables, tomato, whatever. My typical raw stuff.
All right. And you make that back at your hotel or whatever?
Yeah, my hotel. Unfortunately, I eat quite a lot in hotels. Produce little bit plastic waste a lot. So
yeah.
Probably hotels people not very happy with me, but sorry, what to do? Yeah. A lot of tofu I eat. I like tofu. Yeah, so this is a thing. And this kind of a thing. Of course, I cannot cook in the hotels.
So it's raw or nothing.
Raw.
I guess,
I found here some interesting, this flax oil kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I put it on a salad.
All right, I see.
Some
good.
Garlic powder or something. I like garlic. Things like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a very that's a lot of people who are not vegan hear that. I'm sure they would think that's a lot of work just to keep on your vegan diet. But I would probably do the same. But also, I still recognize that it is a lot of work, and it's very
yes.
How to say this? I think it's quite admirable that you're going to those lengths because Japan is not vegan friendly in the countryside, and
yes.
to keep that and not go I'll be vegetarian when I need to outside because it's so inconvenient. I don't want to walk that far and then back to the hotel and eat that kind of food. So that's great. Congratulations to you. That's really good. Thumbs up. So can you talk a bit about the hiking? And I think you're running as well, yes. Because you said that in the past you were very unhealthy, yes. Overall and overweight, and then you started doing some hiking, and with that also came some changes in your diet. And so now we're in 2019. Yes. I think you're pretty active physically. Yeah. You're vegan. What's the difference in health, how you feel about yourself compared to, if you can remember, how you felt about yourself in the past?
It's practically uncomparable almost. Yeah. I feel better than when I was 30 or 35 years old. Uh-huh. Yeah. I was actually quite in a good shape until about 30 years, and then they call it middle age crisis. Uh-huh. So I went to the quite bad situation. I had heavy depressions and things like that, which was very strange because actually I was eating meat at that time. I contributed the same story. Even as a meat eater, I was not getting enough, like a B12 or something that affect my brain. And also no movement. So my kind of job was quite static. And though was one time in my life for some, I remember I had a bicycle and I was going with this bicycle to my work, and actually was quite well at that time. But then what happened? I forget. Bicycle broke or something. So I left without. So
I see.
No. Actually, another story. I was promoted in my work, unfortunately. So you think it's for good. But then suddenly my amount of work became much more, and I couldn't do this free. I was working like a Japanese one at the time until 7, 8 o'clock in the evenings, and I stopped all sport and this.
I see.
It was very negative actually for the health reasons.
Yeah.
For the health part. But then, I came to Vienna. I was still. I was traveling a lot, but. You just take a plane or some bus, taxi, whatever, you don't move. So it's also fun. And also in the Western society, everything is made so convenient. You just practically, if you don't really focus, you don't move.
Yeah.
Like everywhere there are elevators, escalators, there are stairs, but of course you take escalator, not a stair or something. Yeah. So I degraded, literally, just lack of movement, and this showed up.
And so it got way better. Was it already noticeable when you changed your diet?
Yes. Actually, I became to move before my diet.
Okay. So you started hiking before changing anything with your diet?
Yes. Something 2007 or 8. I started hiking actually 1 or 2 years before changing my to vegan diet. Just for a comparison to tell you, I was 92 kilogram at the time, a bit overweight. Though I was kind of hiking, but to tell you, these hikers, they were giving me hard time, and there was kind of one hiking society there, and most of them old pensionist ladies. Yeah. More or less, I was their level, so I was comparing to some good, actually active people in pension, but I was 20-something years younger than them. Yeah. But slowly, I start to gain stamina and strength, and at some point, and I reach kind of a top 6-7 people in this group. So we start to go tough and hikes like. Now, at that time, even I did first time in my life very unresponsibly the highest peak in Austria, which is very difficult actually to make it. It's Glockner, about 3,800 a very tough condition. Only for this trip, actually, I cut 4 kilograms of my weight. Oh, yeah, because I had to climb 1,600 meters in the snow condition and rock climbing and things like that. Yeah, and with this my weight at that time, I wonder now how I did it. But,
yes, sounds pretty crazy.
I time do such kind of crazy things, and this opened, and then I switched to vegan diet. Suddenly my weight start to go down. And I reach about 83 kilograms. So with the change of vegan diet, I cut to about 10 kilograms less, and hiking. Then I was still keeping long time this 83 kilogram, and for some reason, I think maybe genetically also, my cholesterol level is typically was very high, up to 300 almost. Oh, yeah, and we had some examination from our work, and the doctor was very not pleased with these results. And I told her, I don't feel bad. And this, she said, everybody tells this. But when it's coming time for heart attacks and this and that, so she forced me actually to go to doctor, which I went. I was a bit disappointed, and they this is from health part for veganism, to tell you. I was already vegan, kind of, but still high cholesterol. Apparently takes some time until you lower down.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of consequences. But I was feeling much better, nevertheless. And even with this high cholesterol. And then went to this doctor. They sent me to take blood and this and that again. And I spoke with one my colleague who had a heart attack before, and he was also very high cholesterol. And they said, you know what they prescribe for this high cholesterol? I said, what? And he said, statin. It's called statin. I said, so what's this? And I said, there's some drugs. And he said, but there's another not very pleasant things about these statins that he said, once you start taking them,
you can't stop.
You can't stop for that.
It's for life.
And I said, I don't like this. I mean, I'm not going to take statins. But from the same time, even doctor threatened me to stop me for work. I mean, I lose my job practically if I don't take care for my cholesterol levels and this and that. So I have to do it naturally. And what to do? Okay, I have to even more aggressive, to do some more aggressive weight, losing of weight. Apparently, I still have a fat in my body, pretty much enough. And what to do? And I researched a little bit. Well, one of the methods was Atkins diet or something.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
You've heard about this,
yes,
which is actually consists of eating only meat, practically, nothing else.
Yes, only mostly proteins. I think it's 90% protein, and like that. What was it? Like carbs, basically less than 10% or something like that.
So what I'm going to say, I don't recommend to anybody, but I did it. It was effective. I decided to veganize it. I mean, I'm not going to, under any circumstances, to return to meat eating, but apparently this is what is working. And the whole story, you have to eat a lot of proteins. So, and to find a food which is very rich, vegan food which is very rich in proteins. Even beans are, proteins, but not so much rich. So I started going in the shops, took me about 1 week researching and looking on the labels and dividing and measuring percentage. And I come to the 4 products only. So this is tofu, maybe 50 or more percent of mushrooms, sauerkraut. Yeah, very strangely. Sauerkraut is a very rich of proteins, actually, because when bacteria ferment the kraut, they eat carbohydrates, and what left is proteins. So and seitan.
Okay.
So 4 products. And these were readily available or shops, so I bought a large quantity, and 2 months I was eating only these 3 things. Hate.
you started to hate it.
But first week, nothing. And end of first week, I start to get a headache. It's actually not a very unpleasant process of losing weight. Very unpleasant.
Yeah, well, restricting your diet to 4 foods, it can't be good.
And also, I bought a lot of supplements which don't have calories, but they have a lot. So I was taking kind of vitamins and minerals in addition to this, not to get sick.
All right.
Otherwise, you'll get sick. Only these products, just pure. They are very highly processed food which contain nothing else besides. So you really can get sick. So I didn't get sick. Just was the whole story.
Yeah, headache is probably because of the lack of carbs and being in keto. I guess if you were, I don't know if you would be in keto with that because there's still carbs in those foods. I'm not going to look it up, but go on.
But carbs, a very interesting experience actually. I got headaches, but suddenly the end of the first week, 1 kilo drop down. And it encouraged me. I feel bad and this and that. My body started to smell. I was smelling nasty because, in fact, I become a meat eater of my own flesh, of my own.
Is that so?
Yes, you eat because it's and I start to go down. And this encouraged me, actually. You feel bad, but in a way, good, because you really start to see it's working. And that way, 8 weeks, or 8 or 10 weeks. So I dropped this was very sharp losing weight for 2 months. And I went to 73 kilograms. And then you cannot imagine, when you start little bit on the end taking carbohydrates, you feel very well because body absorbs them very well. And on a 73 kilograms, I cut the whole process, and I feel light like a feather. And my hiking, I was the first of the group. Yeah, everything went very... But of course, with years later, I'm now about 78, 79. I succeed to gain another 5 kilos.
And how about the cholesterol?
Cholesterol from 300 dropped to 180.
180. Okay.
Yeah, which not the best,
it's
but
in the norms. Yeah,
it went to the norm without any. And I'm proud of that. I did it without any statins. Then I spoke with our doctor, a very intelligent lady, another doctor, not this that a bit forced me, and she said, "You know what you did? This with statins you cannot do."
Yeah, well, I mean,
you are much more effective than a statin because plant-based. She said with statins, maybe you from 300 you can drop to 240, but more not. And you did much more than you did correct, but it was tough. I said, yes, it was tough, but I did it, yeah.
Well, I mean, I would be surprised if there's not another way to just have a more, let's say, less crazy diet, even if it takes you more than a couple of months, you know, and just like have it drop gradually. I don't know why you have high cholesterol to begin with, but
I think it's genetic in my case. My countrymen are kind of known for such a high cholesterol.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why, but yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you didn't get sick in the first place with that crazy diet of yours, and that you managed to more or less maintain your weight cut benefits, because most people who go through drastic diets tend to rebound and gain the weight back later, because the body is not meant to really go through those phases of like well, I mean, not meant, maybe that happened in the past when people would like binge on food and then go without food for a long time, because that was how food availability would make things go. But yeah, in our current society, it's better to aim for a sustainable diet. And so it's good that you're maintaining a healthy body weight there, and that your cholesterol level is low now, all things considered. Did you get your levels checked recently?
Yeah, it stays about that now. It's awesome. 180 for maybe since the last time I did it, it stays the same way.
I see. And another question, you told me you were eating tofu nowadays, so that's one of the foods that you were eating back during that crazy diet that you got back to. But how about sauerkraut, seitan, and what was the fourth one? Mushrooms. Is there any of those foods that you just can't see even in picture nowadays?
No, I love them still.
Okay.
I love them.
All right, well, good for you. Okay, good for you.
I was actually afraid that I'm going to start to hate them, but apparently these are one of the best sources of protein, so my body doesn't reject them. They still need.
All right, good.
Now I want them with another stuff, with some carbs.
Now I'm curious, because I'm curious if you experience was really going into keto state. That means like you're getting less than something like 30 grams of carbs a day, or even 20. And that would explain, to some extent, the headaches and the smell and that kind of thing. Now, I don't know the relationship between being in such a keto state on a high protein, low fat, because that's very low fat as well, right?
Yeah, it's almost
very
not fat.
Atkins, so it's Atkins diet in the really from what I understand about the Atkins diet, the real sense.
Joking, I veganized Atkins diet.
Yeah, because like the low carb diet of like that's trendy nowadays, the keto diet nowadays is mostly based on fats for calories. Yes. And so there's a higher protein intake than a non-keto diet or regular, like let's say omnivore diet. But it's still high in fat, and you didn't get that. So I wouldn't think it to be healthy at all. It's probably very, very unhealthy in the long run, but good that it worked for you. All right. So you feel way better on your current diet. And so you started running also. When did that happen?
Actually, it happened 3 years ago. I'm kind of a bit old to be starting running, and I was a bit worried about my knees, and so I actually didn't intend at all to run. I was thinking kind of hiking is enough for me, like exercise, and it's more smooth and not so painful for the joints. But kind of in a vegan society in Vienna, I met one very nice vegan German lady. And turn out she runs. She's not a marathon runner, but she regularly do half marathons and things like that. And she kind of influenced me. We got friends with her, and she said, "Why you don't try?" And she's older than me, 3 years older than me. And I said, "How you run?" I mean, she said, "I don't have problem with joints or anything. Just I run." I said, "Well, let's do in the center of Vienna. It's about 5 kilometers, and they regularly do competitions there. And let's run." She said, "Come at one moment." And I came, and first my 5 kilometer. I never run 5 kilometer before. Even I tried to run, although I was a good hiker, but to run 1 kilometer was cool. But with her, I started running, and it was very tough to tell. In the beginning, actually, this was my mistake. I ran very fast, so I didn't know how to control my pace and this and that. So I ran very fast and barely finished. But I did. How much was 33 minutes or something like that? Slow. It's very slow, but I finished. I was very happy to finish. And after that, I opened up to running. And interestingly, a few months after that, I came here in Japan and was searching where to run in Japan. I found running around Emperor Palace is kind of maybe the most famous place to run.
Yes.
5 kilometers, exactly the same distance, like center of Vienna. And I decided, I was 4 weeks here, so I had 3 weekends. And I decided, okay, let's see each weekend I go running. First weekend I did one loop, that's 5 kilometers, which I already knew. And second week I run 5 kilometers. I said, can I run one loop more? It sounds I never run 10 kilometers. But I continue running. And I did 10 kilometers. I said, wow, how come I can run 10K? And then third week I said, I decided to run 2 loops. And again, can I run one loop more? 15 kilometers. And I couldn't believe in 2 months I did from 0 to 15K, which only vegan diet can assure you.
Maybe it's related, yes.
And then 3 months later was a new year, exactly 31st of December, and I decided to go we were running with some vegan friends, with Team Vegan Austria, actually.
All right, cool.
This Prater, you maybe heard, there is a long alley, 5K long, so there we run about 9-10 kilometers there. And this time I was alone, actually, went and decided. And I started running and was thinking to do regular 10K. I said, why I don't try half marathons, 21K. And at that time, actually, I bought this watch and I knew what I'm doing. So
the running watch,
running watch. And I started running. And until 70, 80 kilometers was okay. After that, a lot of pain in my muscles and this and that. But I was no, I have to finish this. And not very fast, but I did a half marathon for 2 hours and 26 minutes.
All right, awesome. Yeah, cool.
And it was tremendous achievement. I was so happy. I mean, I didn't even much prepare for half marathon, but I did it in 3 months. I did from 0 to half marathon.
That's awesome. It's quite impressive progress. Yeah.
It cost me about 1 week, almost sick.
You overdid it.
Yeah, I overdid, but I was happy kind of. And after that, I started running. Not so much. Half marathon I do time to time, maybe. Yeah. In total, I've done in my life 5 or 6 times half a marathon, not so much.
Yeah.
And with the same lady, one time we attempted full marathon.
Oh.
And I couldn't run actually the whole time. I was partially running, partially fast walking. I couldn't run, but my body just blocked when we reached 38K.
Oh, really?
So my dream is to make a full marathon.
I see.
Yeah.
Maybe someday with even maybe friends from Team Vegan. So you made this meetup group, Team Vegan, with whom you are like organizing hikes.
Yes.
And are you organizing runs as well on the meetup?
Yeah, runs and hikes.
All right, cool. Well, I'll look into the hikes. I'm not getting out of this concrete jungle enough. I've said that several times in the past few months to friends who go hiking. And now that I'm in our meetup group, I might consider it sometime. But yeah, there's always so many things to do here.
Yes.
So not right now, but running, yeah. So we've been going a couple times running since we're neighbors. And yeah,
I want to develop the group and attract more people and make it fun and
it's cool. Like the running, I've always done it solo, but with friends, it's a different experience.
Absolutely.
It's really nice.
Even yesterday I did a run with Junko-san.
Oh, you did?
She's another member, very active now.
Where did you run?
In Kiba Park.
Oh.
Actually, turn out there is a whole society in Kiba Park that I run. Not vegan, but...
I mean, running in parks is really not my thing. I go to Kiba Park, which is like about 1K from my job and 1.5K from here. I go with kids with school when I coach cross country because it's convenient to have them run loops, but I can't run loops. I need to run one loop. Yeah. I need to not go. That's what I told you when we were running along the river here.
Yes.
And you tend to go all the way to the end of a path, even if you have to come back because it's a dead end, right?
Yes.
I don't like to go back on where I came from. I need change, and I think that's related to just who I am. It's the same in life, I think, and in running. I don't like to go to do the same thing twice.
Actually, I had an idea, but she was a bit busy to go to Arakawa River with bicycle, and then leave the bicycle and then run. I never run yet along Arakawa River. I heard that it's very actually straight, better than Sumida.
I have a great running course that I've done with some kids that I took outside of the park because they were good runners. I did that a few times last school year and the previous one. And I have a very good course. If you've been or not to the Nishikasai Koen or something like that, it's a very nice park, and you can get there through the Arakawa, crossing a bridge, running along, going all the way to the sea, and going into that park, and then back through like that part of town. But it's a very nice run. It's about, I think, 15K or something like that.
Perfect. So
it's great. I'll look into it, and maybe I'll come up with a plan and submit it to you guys. So if you want to make an event out of that,
I will be happy to.
I'll think about it, but definitely not gonna happen before I leave the country in a few weeks from now. Well, we're recording this in early June, so and I'm gonna release the episode when I come back. So, anyways, and then when I come back, it's gonna be very hot in August.
Yeah, it will be.
So maybe not at that time, but maybe like towards the end of summer or autumn, something like that.
Yeah,
okay,
perfect. Yeah.
Cool. I would have loved to ask you more about your job, actually, but I'm sorry. I'm kind of running out of time with everything I want to get done today,
Yes,
and
yes.
we're about, I think, yes, almost 2 hours of recording already.
Yes, yes.
Which is great. I'd love to go in more depth, like about a lot of things, but maybe leave that topic for another time.
Yes, okay.
And maybe ask you some rapid fire questions where you don't have to expand on the topic. Is there a profession, a job other than the one you are doing now that you would have loved to do? Like if you could start again, but just change that thing and everything else is the same, let's say.
Well, I was, so my actually education, I'm a physicist, and I graduated nuclear physics in a way, though when in my university I was second year, I had to choose the field of study, of particularly physics, and I chose nuclear. I was actually, I qualified to study astronomy.
Oh, really? Astronomy?
Yeah, in a way. And then later I decided, okay, there was an opening, like I was in the waiting list in nuclear, and I went to nuclear on the end because one guy went out. And I left astronomy. I didn't study astronomy. I a bit regret this. So
all right.
If I need to do the choice again, I probably don't not choose nuclear physics, but I'll choose astronomy.
That sounds pretty cool. Astronomy
Yes.
sounds cool to me for some reason.
Feel somehow, although I mean they study similar things in a way, a little bit different, of course, but I a bit regret I didn't study astronomy.
I see. All right, got it. So astronomer, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Though for a job, I mean, with nuclear I had much more stable opportunity and kind of a stable job, but highly regulated, not so interesting, a bit boring, and astronomy would be fascinating.
I see. Yeah, no, definitely it must be fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something you're curious about right now? Like, if you have some free time and you feel like up to researching something, is there something that sounds more interesting to you?
Well, if I have a free time and I probably do some research in general physics or like a theoretical physics. I had some
related
topics
to your
which
job then, I see.
Yeah, a bit related to my job. Even the health and this and that is kind of a side things. It's interesting in a way, but my job. That's why in the first place I studied these professions.
Well, I mean, sure. It's definitely something that is interesting to you, right?
I had some suspicions. Let's say there were several mistakes done when the general and special relativity was done and the basic experiments, and I want to explore these things. Yeah,
I see.
I started actually a few years ago, though I need maybe few months just not to do anything in my job, just to relax and then clear my mind and then do the job, because it requires a lot of concentration.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, a lot of calculations and
I gave up everything related to mathematics and physics a long time ago, but I still think it's a fascinating area of inquiry, and that's great. Do you have any opinion about how the world will become, or Japan will become, more vegan friendly in the years to come? Do you have kind of a time scale, like you think that in 5 years, in 10 years, it's going to be like this or like that? Anything to say about this?
I'm sure. I have a personal opinion that Japan now, to be fair, is quite behind other countries in vegan, because I visit many countries.
Yeah.
But they are interesting people. They are very difficult to convince, but once convinced, they'll do everything. So my opinion is following. They are now resisting, but at some point, even they get only partially the benefits known out of vegan diet, and it will be abrupt change. We will not recognize in a not 5 years, maybe too short period, but in 10, 15 years, I believe it will be even more than other countries.
Oh, that's interesting.
It will be abrupt change. The moment they get realized that it's really good, these things. Yeah. Even last time I was a bit arguing with one guy, I said, the reason Japanese don't want to embrace veganism, they think vegan diet, their diet based on fish and seafood, and it's the healthiest in the world, kind of. Just they don't know that vegan diet healthier than healthy. So it will take some time to be convinced, and then they will change.
I see. Yeah, yes. That's an interesting point of view, opinion. I hadn't considered that opinion yet. Great. I hope it's the case, and hopefully sooner than later. Even
yesterday, actually, I was kind of ahead for the out of vegan march and this and that. I felt this, to tell you, this already changing attitude to everybody.
That might be true. I did the march last year. I did the march this year. There might have been some differences. I wouldn't really be able to quantify those, but yeah.
I felt it kind of there already. Awareness is coming.
I think there's more recognition that it's a thing now. Yes. Now saying that they will agree mostly to the content of the message, especially the ethical one. It's a trickier proposition. I don't think it's going to be the case, but the media was way more present. The media was like everywhere yesterday compared to a year ago. And so, yeah, with the Olympic coming, with this, I'm very curious to see what's going to be the march next year.
Yes.
Like we had 251, I think, participants this year. That's a bit higher than last year. It's very, very small considered to a lot of countries in the West, yes, right? Yeah. But for Japan and the places we're marching in, like Shibuya, like very famous touristic place, and also like just popular with Tokyoites. And I mean, there's a lot of people around you, a lot of people. Yes. And 250 people dressed mostly in red, marching and showing big pictures of factory farm conditions and some others that are more like cute pictures also, but and shouting messages about something that no Japanese thinks about at all, way yes. less than the West. It has to have some amount of impact. And all those elements, the Olympics, the growing mindset, awareness about especially the health
yes.
related adventures of eating a plant-based diet, etc. Yeah, there's change happening. So I'm curious to see if it's going to be like you say it will.
Yeah.
But that would be great.
Yes, I think 5 years, not so much. Maybe Olympic will change drastically. I'm not aware how much, but it will change something. But 10 years will be different. The breaking point.
Yeah, let's see how it is in 10 years from now.
Yeah.
All right. One question that I haven't asked yet anyone, and I heard it recently in a podcast, and I thought it was a great question. I'm not sure it's going to really be meaningful to you, but there's a lot of popular, famous people who are vegan nowadays, right? Like more and more so, like you can say people like, Natalie Portman or who else? Like athletes as well, or like a lot of them are vegan.
Who was Carl Lewis?
Carl Lewis, like he said he was vegan, but I mean, he's not an athlete anymore, like not an active one. But so definitely those people have a lot of impact, yes, usually positive impact on making people who consider them healthy and like them, they want to be a bit like them, so they will consider vegan diets or plant-based diets where they wouldn't have if their favorite athlete wasn't vegan, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be an athlete, it can be anyone, but who would you want to be vegan? And who do you think, if that person was vegan, would help spread veganism the most? It could be anyone that's not vegan right now. Do you have someone in mind, like famous, popular? figure?
Not really. I don't follow much kind of celebrities.
I see. But if you had to choose one, like let's say, could be a obvious choice maybe for some would be Donald Trump. If you imagine Donald Trump
just
saying he's vegan.
Maybe,
right? maybe some people will just eat more meat because they don't like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But do you have like kind of, if that person was vegan, that would help to spread the message a lot. So you don't have to know people who are already vegan.
Yeah. I considering from a long time actually that kind of famous and popular politician or somebody if came to this point, become a vegan or start promoting things, it will have a huge impact on.
Do you have anyone in mind? Like I said Donald Trump, so you can say Donald Trump.
Who to say? I mean, I don't know any. Now, there is only one vegan.
Yeah, but it has to be someone who's not vegan yet.
Yeah. This Bill Clinton, actually, what I know that he kind of become vegan or vegetarian. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I heard something like that. Yes.
Yeah, kind of, but he's kind of closest to the
I see.
situation.
So you would choose. So yeah, you would choose a politician.
Yeah, Donald Trump if he become vegan.
All right.
Yeah.
I can see that. But you can imagine like like you could say like.
Although for him, I don't believe it's consumable.
Yeah. No, that's true. Like
or who is on his place or whoever. Yeah.
All right, I see.
Or British queens only.
Yes, like those kind of public figure. Like imagine the new emperor.
Yeah,
of Japan, for example.
Or new emperor, yes.
Yeah, that would be a strong message to Japanese people.
Yes.
Right? Even if he doesn't advocate for it, if he says like, "Oh, I'm vegan," and by the way, it's a total healthy diet.
Yeah.
And there was this couple that I think it's a royal couple or related to that, and I don't remember if it's in the UK or somewhere else. It's in Europe that announced they would raise their child vegan.
Yes.
See, that's so huge because if it's true and they manage to do it properly, which I'm not an expert in that, bring up a child on the vegan diet. I think it's totally doable and it's super healthy.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to be careful about some things. But anyways, it's a very important message they're sending the public, right? It's going to change perspectives, especially for people who would never have considered looking into the vegan message. So, all right, a politician then, or maybe a royal figure. That would be a good choice.
Maybe a royal figure more because they are more permanent. Kind of
that definitely
presidents,
would. Yes.
4, 5, 6
You're
years, and they change. So maybe
I wonder if there's already some royal figure who's vegan or at least mostly plant-based diet, but just it didn't make the news. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know much about it either.
Yeah.
All right, let's end up on what I usually end up with. Your 3 favorite eating out places in Tokyo or in Japan. And if it's not 3, 1 is enough, but let's at least start with 1.
In favorites, maybe Eitabish. I kind of like...
Eitabish, yeah, all right. Near Omotesando, I think, like near Shibuya and all of that, yeah.
What else? I like TS Tantan, but not this in the Tokyo station. Maybe Ueno station little bit more. And and third place, I don't know. So sometime there was one this restaurant. I liked one, but it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. Camion or this in
Asakusa when they have the buffet and stuff, all you can eat. They closed recently.
They closed, unfortunately.
It was very good.
This was very good. So this kind of
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the recommendations. I think I tried all 3. I like Eitablish. They're very good, but they're quite expensive as well.
Yes.
But they have dishes, they have cuisine you don't find other places. So it's a good special eating out places. Like if you don't go casually, you go like for special occasions. I think it's great.
I also went to this Ain shop Ripple. I even wanted
Ripple.
to make it kind of a standard for our Team Vegan group.
Oh, really? Like the
but it's
burger
very,
place?
yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
small.
small,
Yeah.
unfortunately. When
Yeah.
you cannot reserve place and this and that.
No, you
Though,
can't. But if the weather is nice, you can just order takeaway and
Yes.
eat it outside. There's not any park that I know of nearby, but I think it shouldn't be too hard to find a spot where everyone can gather and
yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's maybe less
And I
comfortable. But...
notice actually that many people likes it anyway.
Oh yeah, really? Is that so? I love it. I mean, not everything, but I love it. But you have to have a taste for kind of fast food and
Yes,
that kind of
yes.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. Is there some kind of last words you want to say before we end this? Like kind of a message to maybe fathers that are being annoyed by their vegan children and that are like resisting, or maybe something you want to say about what becoming vegan brought to your own life?
Yeah, my message actually is I regret that I didn't become vegan earlier than I found out what it is. Yeah, I can say only this.
All right, that's great. I think it's a feeling shared by most vegans, if not all of them. There's always this.
Yes.
If only you had made that decision earlier, right?
Yes.
But what matters is the now and how you live your day, every life. And I think it's awesome that you were open-minded enough to take in the change at a point in your life, point of time in your life where a lot of people would have just like, lived with the momentum and just kept on having their own habits and not too old to change or whatever. So that's awesome of you.
Yes.
All right. Is there any way people can reach out, maybe ask you some questions if they have some? I mean, they can come to me and I can relay the questions. But if there's a space like, I don't know, that you want to share?
Well, I have a Facebook account. My name is Plamen Iontchev.
All right. Can I share that in the show notes then?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm also, I organize a Team Vegan Japan group in Meetup.
All right, cool.
So you can eventually, if you are vegan, I'm highly encourage you to join.
It's open to non-vegans.
Not unfortunately.
Not really?
Yeah.
You can bring non-vegan friends?
Yes. You
go.
You can bring non-vegan friends. Just the difference is for the membership is close to the vegans only. This was the original actually idea from the. In a way, we want to encourage people to become vegan. That's why. And there is a bigger group that is allowing non-vegan, that Nadia's group.
Yeah, Tokyo Vegan
So
Meetup.
we think it's enough if you want to.
No, you're
join.
right. I think it's a
And we want kind of a
policy.
space more restricted for same-minded people,
Yeah,
and we enjoy
totally
to spend time together.
Yeah, so while it's indirectly open to non-vegans,
Indirectly open,
I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to share all of that in the show notes.
Yes.
And I really want to learn more about the kind of job you're doing and ask questions about that next time we sit down to chat.
Okay.
With microphones or without. We'll see about that. In any case, thank you very much for your time, for walking all the way to my place. Just out of curiosity, how long did it take you?
About 10 minutes or less.
Less than 10 minutes? Whoa, that's really
6,
close.
7 minutes.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
We actually, I noticed we are very, very close to each other. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
we're
almost
very
same
close.
distance like other side of the bridge.
Yeah. Oh, I see. All right. Yeah, that's cool. So next time it's probably going to be either for a run or what are we having? Pink Cow on Thursday. I'm hosting. There you go.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday,
You can't join?
I cannot join.
Tracy is cooking some special stuff.
I know.
And have you seen the list? There's 44 people signed up. I'm sure Tracy is very happy about that because last time it was during Golden Week. No one was there. That's true. We were like about 20 maybe, right? But,
yes.
But that's very little, very few and not good for the restaurant. So.
Yes.
Okay, well, if not Thursday, maybe next weekend if we have some running going on, if you're there.
Yeah, I think we should organize next weekend some running. I have just business trip until Saturday, actually, so that's why I'm not in Tokyo.
All right, sure. Let's message and
Ibaraki.
See how it works. Yeah. And well, have a good start of the week.
Thank you.
And good trip to Ibaraki.
Yes.
And thank you again. And until next time then.
Yes.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
There you have it. This was my conversation with Plamen. Quite fascinating, if you ask me. During our conversation, Plamen explained to me how he was able to address his high cholesterol problem with the vegan, quote-unquote, Atkins diet that he devised himself. First, about the Atkins diet itself. This is what the official website tells us. The Atkins diet is designed to, quote, flip the body's metabolic switch, unquote, from burning carbs to burning fat. So that's the quote that I got from the website. Here are the macros they give for the 2 of their 3 diet plans. Only those 2 are actually ketogenic. The third one is not. The first one is called Atkins 20, as in about maximum 20 grams of carbs, and it's apparently the original Atkins diet, the one the person that was named Atkins developed. I think it's in the 70s. So it's about 60 to 7% calories from fat for your daily calories, 20 to 30% calories from protein-rich foods, and 5 to 10% calories from carbs themselves. Now, Atkins 40, which is the second step in their overall diet plan on their website, is a bit lower in fat, 55 to 65%. Same protein, 20 to 30% of your daily calorie intake, and about double the carbs for the entry range, 10% to 15%, so plus 50% there. Total carbs. So both are very high in fat. Now let's have a look at the nutrients of sauerkraut, seitan, tofu, and mushrooms. So for sauerkraut, for 100 gram, you get 19 calories, 4.3 grams of carbohydrates, 0.9 grams of proteins, and 0.1 grams of fat. So that's 0.1% of fat in sauerkraut. For seitan, and there's different ways to do seitan, but here I'll take an average that you can find easily just Googling it. For 100 gram, you get about 370 calories, 14 grams of carbs, 75 grams of proteins, and 1.9 grams of fat. So it's less than 2% fat in seitan, but tons of proteins, as you can see, 3/4 of the total mass. Tofu, 100 gram, 76 calories, 2.1 grams of carbs, 10.3 grams of proteins, and a whooping 5.3 grams of fat, which is still very low. Mushrooms, and I looked up white mushrooms here. 100 gram, 22 calories, 3.3 grams of carbs, 3.1 grams of proteins, and 0.3 grams of fat. First conclusion, all 4 foods contain close to no fat whatsoever. The fattiest one is tofu with 5%. So in order to get even 55% of daily calories from those 4 foods, you would need to eat an insane amount of tofu. Much more than the carbs you are allowed on such a diet. So the math doesn't work there for the satisfying the fat percentage of an Atkins diet, right? Second conclusion, 3 of those 4 foods are mostly water and fiber, which means they are having a very, very low calorie density. Even eating only seitan, you would need to eat way too many carbs just to hit your caloric intake of the day for what an Atkins diet is supposed to be. So final conclusion, I don't see how the math would magically work for one to be on an Atkins diet as per the Atkins website says you you should proceed there for the macros, while eating only those four foods. Even a super restrictive seitan-only diet of 1,000 calories per day, which is about half of what an adult male needs to sustain himself daily, and that is obviously not really sustainable for 2 months, would mean you would have to eat a little more than 42 grams of carbs. And again, only seitan, right? Which is higher than even what Atkins 40 recommends. Now, you might be in keto at that stage or not, I don't know. But you get the point. It's not an Atkins diet there. And that is without eating anything else, which means you would lack a lot of other very important nutrients, vitamins and minerals, which actually Plamen told us he supplemented, if you go back to the podcast. Also, I have copied an additional detailed account of his experience he sent me after I reached out to him about this quite unusual outro. So I copied his reply that's related to this topic in the show notes. I'm also going to read it. Quote, "My secret with this vegan, quote, Atkins, unquote, diet was not the calorie intake. Actually, if you are overweight, you have a lot of calories stored as fat in your body, and this is the whole point, to get rid of them by burning that fat. I thought that the reason that you may end up in the hospital is not the calories, but other micronutrients like vitamins and minerals that you stop taking when you go in this crazy diet. I was fully aware of the danger and was taking daily from multivitamins about 4 daily doses each day, much more than normal, so to check deficiencies even if there is low absorption. Also controlling my BMI not to get below 23. In that way, I was fully okay from a health standpoint. Just some unpleasant feelings since your body becomes not vegan for this period, meaning you start eating your own flesh, mostly fat. But the moment you eat some carbs, you get so pleasant feelings, but weight stop going down. Anyway, I don't recommend my diet to anyone, but I think I almost did the limit of the rate by which the body weight can be reduced, which is about 1 kilogram a week." End quote. So that's what Plamen sent me yesterday. And it completes what he told us in the podcast. And also, it says that he doesn't recommend this diet to anyone. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether his diet could have been labeled as Atkins or not. What matters is that he solved this cholesterol problem without suffering serious health consequences following his extremely restrictive 2-month diet. That being said, I'll repeat what I said in the introduction of this podcast. I strongly recommend avoiding any such restrictive diets, whether people call them ketogenic, Atkins, or paleo. Now, Plamen did this after doing extensive research and going to a doctor, hearing about the alternative, which was statin. So if you try to put yourself in his shoes and not wanting to just take medication for his whole life, I suppose you can maybe see yourself going the same route of playing with your health, let's say. So again, I really don't recommend doing this. I'll always recommend going to a professional and following their advices, but doctors have very little knowledge about nutrition, especially like current knowledge as far as I understand it. They have more than most people probably, but it's not their focus when they study medicine. So yeah, blindly following their advice, especially when you're plant-based, as many of you might know, is a difficult choice to make. So I can't imagine how he felt facing those decisions himself, but there you have it. And on this note, I'll roll out the regular outro. Thank you for listening to the ciplantgo podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please think about sharing it with friends and on social media. Ciplantgo is also on Instagram and Facebook at ciplantgo. There you can have a look at the latest things going on in my plant-based life in Japan. There is also an email address, ciplantgo@gmail.com. Feel free to send me a message, whether it's to ask a question, give me suggestions for ciplantgo, or anything else. Have a great rest of the day, and until next time.